Good day, ladies and gentlemen. This is Greg.
This is Matt.
And this is the bottom tier of Flesh and Blood podcast. Thank you all. Stop saying that. You say that every single time now.
It's becoming, I'm trying to make it a thing, Greg.
All right, guys. On Twitter, at bottom tier pod, hashtag bottoms up. Guys, we have a super, super exciting episode for you today. We have, fresh off of his victory from the Road to Nationals down in Tucson, ladies and gentlemen, is friend of the show, Jaime. Jaime, say hi to the people at home.
Hi, how y'all doing?
And there he is, folks. We truly sit in front of greatness.
I do think that Road to Nationals winning is a great achievement, but I mean, he won something even greater, which is the Commoner Cup.
The Commoner Cup.
The Commoner Cup.
Yeah, the good old Commoner Cup.
The inaugural East Valley, Arizona
Commoner Cup.
Phoenix area Commoner Cup.
There's only one like it. There
literally is only one like it, and it cost all of what, like 35 cents, including the paint and stuff?
It was 50 cents.
We all know it's priceless. It's one of one.
Exactly.
Of one, yes. And
extremely limited edition.
It's going to be great. I'm going to be like cutting up cold foils now and gluing it on top of it. So it's going to be great. It's going to be a good time. For those of you who just cringed at hearing me cutting up cold foils, don't worry, it's just quelling slippers is getting cut up, so that's not a big problem.
It's nothing nobody cares about, so we're good.
Nothing much. But Jaime, we're excited to have you. We want to be able to talk a little bit. A lot about this podcast is about, we're the bottom tier. Greg and I don't win a lot unless it's Commoner.
Unless it's Commoner, in which case you still kicked my butt.
It was close, though. You were in the finals.
It wasn't bad.
But we want people to be able to kind of take that and like learn and how to go from there. But first, we kind of want to know more about you. Like, what got you into Flesh and Blood? And you won with Viscerai. What kind of got you into the hero and stuff like that?
Okay, yeah, sure. So I started out playing Magic the Gathering when I was in high school.
Man, old school.
Yeah, gotta love it. Like, it introduced me to trading card games and being competitive and whatnot. It was a great time. And then I kind of slept on Flesh and Blood when it came out until last year, 2021, Tales of Aria. And I was kind of just not liking where the Magic scene was going. There wasn't really a Pro Tour anymore. Granted, there was COVID and whatnot, but just wasn't the game I remembered. So I looked into Flesh and Blood and picked it up, and it was just love at first play. Like, the decision making, the intricacies, it's very much a game of inches, where the difference between victory and loss is one, just like a second decision.
Just like the smallest little misplay can cost you the entire match, and there's no way to come back from it.
Exactly. And, it's still a card game. There's still variance or whatnot. You could still make mistakes and win, or play perfectly and lose. That's the hobby we live in. But,
Amen.
But a lot of decisions and a lot of intricacies that I really enjoy.
That's awesome. And what got you into Viscerai? Like, why that hero or Runeblades? You played Chain before this. So.
Right. So I picked up Chain.
Gang.
Yeah, Chain Gang. I opened his legendary chest as my first legendary.
Oh, nice.
So that made me build Chain.
That was my first legendary, too.
Yeah, man. Yeah. It's a great... So I played him. I hadn't decided on a hero at the time. I was between Prism and Chain. And I just enjoyed the crap out of him. He's just such a fun and rewarding play. The setting up for cards that you're gonna pseudo draw on your turn, but you don't know what you're gonna draw, playing to the odds. And let's all be real, Rosetta Thorn is a really good card.
Yeah,
so, one of easily the best weapons in the game.
Oh, absolutely.
It is. I would say it is the best weapon in the game. Yeah.
Right. So like when Chain got Living Legend, I didn't really know what to do. I went back to Prism because I did play that off and on when I needed a break from Chain, and it just didn't feel good in this meta. And I was like, well, I know Runeblade, so let's do Viscerai. I don't really like the way Briar plays. He seems more varied but high stakes, with Channel Mount. It's you have very powerful games if you see 2 to 3 channel mounts, and you don't if you don't. And I didn't like that so much. So Viscerai just seemed like the middle of the road, but good generally. Sure, it has some slips, but it also had Belittle Minnowism, which Chain ran, which I knew from experience is just very
super
potent.
Powerful.
Yeah, it's just that card should probably get banned in CC.
Hey, it was banned in Commoner.
Exactly. Exactly. So was Ball Lightning, and Ball Lightning was banned in CC.
Oh yeah, that's true.
So I just decided quickly, like a week before the Road to Nationals, looked up lists, saw the Arsenal Pass list, and I was like, you know what? Let's jam it. Shouldn't play too differently from Chain, in which it really doesn't. So, did well.
Awesome. That's fantastic. Kind of while you were going through this process after Chain was Living Legend, you were sort of searching around for something new. Was it just like stumbled upon Viscerai, found the list, really like loved it just from like first blush? Or did you play around with a few heroes first to kind of get a feel for how things would play against each other and sort of where the meta was sitting at?
Good question. So we have a pretty dedicated group of testers here, so I didn't really play many decks, but I watched decks get played by our playtesters, and we had the Dashes, the new Phis, the Dromais, Prism, of course, Dory. We had everything being tested under the sun, and none of them just felt as explosive and varied as Viscerai. And I did lose in the finals in Blitz with my Chain to a Viscerai, so I was like, this deck back in the skirmish season. And I was like, this deck has something on it. I want to.
And that something is Rune Chant.
Yes, it does make Rune Chants. Chain doesn't get to feel those Rune Chants. But Chain has Go Again more often. Sometimes Viscerai can be clunky. You only have the 9 Mauvern Skies. To play Viscerai well, you need to learn how to get 3 activations out of boots. 2 to 3 every match.
So there's a lot of tech involved in it that you maybe don't necessarily see like at the first blush, that you maybe don't also then see with other rune blades, right?
Yeah, precisely. Like Briar, he can make the embodiment of lightning, and he runs the snapback scalers, the boots to get Go Again. Whereas Viscerai, you live or die by the Go Again. You have the 9 Mauvern Skies and then boots, and that's pretty much it in the deck. So you're looking to hit Rosetta every turn, so you just got to find a way to do it.
Yeah. That's kind of like the big thing is like with Rosetta, I feel like it kind of added that extra mechanic in Runeblade of like, hey, I got to make sure I always have a non-attack action and an attack action to be able to make sure I hit this 2 for 2, which is completely deadly in a lot of certain scenarios, right? Right. So like that's super interesting. Like what got you into such like kind of what I'm trying to say, like a complicated more hero, like
more technical.
More technical, I would say.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Thank you.
Solid job, Matt.
I was like, Greg can't outdo me in this podcast. So.
I think a lot of it has to do with the Magic background. I was always kind of a control player, and I like to be more thinky and proactive.
A lot of blue, a lot of
blue-white controls, my baby, or blue-black sometimes even. Ooh. But
no idea what you guys are saying.
Blue-black is fun. I love that. Dispel, drain, fucking,
old school.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I wanted a deck that just wasn't like a Phi, throw my hand at you, or even Starvo. Oh, look, Monopoly, throw my hand at you kind of thing. I wanted to make a lot of decisions each game, because I think that's one of the key ways to become a really good player in this format is force yourself and your opponent to make a lot of decisions. The more decisions you make, granted, the more mistakes you're going to make and the more mistakes your opponent's going to make. But when you make mistakes that cost you games, you will remember them, and hopefully you won't do it again.
And then kind of to piggyback off of that, the more decisions that you're making at a time, the easier it is to sort of pivot away from a mistake or something that you're forced into playing because that's the hand that you got. You can adapt a little bit more easily with more opportunities. Whereas I feel like if you're playing something like a Brute, where you get, maybe 1 non-attack and an attack per turn, if you don't have what you need, you're kind of in a lot of trouble at that point.
Right, or a Ranger. 3 of a kind, no arrows, my turn's over.
Yep. Oof, that did happen. That happened at Road to Nationals for one of our local players. So shout out to Marshall if you listen to this.
Yeah.
Bummer. We love you, Marshall.
Yeah. So I think kind of like when I kind of lost my train of thought, but when you are playing or when you're going through all this like adaptation of this hero, I was like, I had a really good thing in my brain, and I was like, I'm gonna just keep talking and see what happens.
Why did I choose Vis over something else?
No. Kind of like what? Greg, take the question. You're going for it.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah.
So,
I'm sorry, this is the worst part of the podcast, but
it's totally good, Matt. You'll come back around to it. It's okay.
We'll circle back.
We're drinking Michelob
like
Ultra.
vultures.
There is beer being consumed, so please forgive us. Include that, accounts for the F-bomb a few minutes ago. Normally we try not to swear. We try to keep it like PG-13.
Oh, okay, good to know.
But
I didn't know that was a rule until just now.
Today's a screw it session, guys. So you're a Runeblade player. I'm a Runeblade player. I play a lot against Matt. So he's sort of, I guess, an honorary Runeblade player.
Runeblades.
Briar is ticking up the list. A lot of people have adopted Briar, especially recently, I feel like, with the Uprising change in the meta. So what happens when Briar and Rosetta get pumped up into Living Legend? What do we replace that with? Like, how is that going to change the entire scope of the hero?
So, hopefully by then, a new Shadow Runeblade comes out to replace Chain.
Amen.
Otherwise, just with the super fast Katsus and Phis and even dashes in the format, I don't know if Viserai will be able to hold his own without Rosetta. It is that powerful of a weapon. You know, just at the end of your turn, 1 for 4, pretty much guaranteed. It checks for what the deck already wants to do. It'll be in a tough spot if Briar hits the LL before we get something close to it.
So you heard it here first, everybody. Write those letters, send those emails, spam those tweets at Legend Story Studios. Tell them to give us a new Shadow Runeblade, please. Somebody.
Now, here's like a fun question is like, what are you looking forward to in the game? What would you like to see as far as like heroes or cards in the future? What would be something you'd be stoked to see?
I really enjoy the illusionist classes, both Dromai and Prism. I like the auras and the allies thing. And there's been talk on the winds about a necromancer class coming up. Just like people speculating and whatnot. Supposedly LSS wants to do it, and I really want to see a necromancer class.
That would be cool.
That would be super exciting.
Having skeleton army would be really neat.
Right? It's like just pull stuff, like use stuff in your graveyard as materials for summoning allies. Like that would be a really interesting gimmick. I would enjoy that.
As far as recreating a Shadow Runeblade, what would your Chain 2.0 look like? What would be your Shadow Runeblade that you do?
It's actually interesting. I've discussed this with a couple of local players here, and it's no guarantee to be Chain, right?
Yeah.
Because storyline wise, Chain did something with Viserai to summon Ursur, and supposedly Viserai escaped, so we could see a Shadow Viserai or something like that, and that's kind of what I'm leaning towards. Something with like an activated once per turn action with go again to sacrifice a rune chance to banish the top of your deck.
That would be interesting.
It would be very interesting.
Yeah.
And since it's not automatic and has a cost associated with it, you can keep Seeds of Agony in the format because it's not just a given, you know?
That's true.
Seeds of Agony is way too powerful.
It is.
It's ridiculously good.
I never got to play with it in CC. I started after it got banned, but seeing it in Commodore last night, it's spicy.
You're welcome.
Good times.
Very good times. So pending any further questions that we come up with or remember, let's go ahead and pivot a little bit. Let's go into a segment that we like to call Lessons Learned. So Jamie, if you've never listened to the podcast before, first of all, what are you doing? Second of all, we like to take a few minutes every week to just kind of talk about the things that we've learned in the previous week. Every game you play is an opportunity to learn something. It teaches you something about the game, about your deck, about somebody else's deck, and how you want to counter that. So we like to kind of go through that and just kind of reflect on how we've been doing, what we've picked up over the last week or so, and I'd really be interested to hear yours and Matt's thoughts, of course, on what you picked up over this last week playing games and living the fab life.
Let's have somebody else go first.
Yeah. So for lessons learned, there's that old saying where it's like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yep.
Well, the opposite is true too. If it's broken, you got to fix it. I haven't won with Phi against our competitive community, which is nuts in CC. I've been doing pretty well. I've won some mirror matches, but they've never been on the actual tournament board where it's I won. I won against one person, but they just built a new deck too, and it was just kind of we're at the same level. So I finally was all right, I'm gonna take apart my deck, see what's wrong with it, and try to put new things that I was totally against before. I was I'm gonna throw the Art of Wars in, even though I was I feel Art of War is kind of like a cop-out, and it's a $40 card. I don't really want to spend that money to go buy those cards. So, I'm playing with, running that and, Command and Conquer instead of, Breaking Point, because, I can use that for something else and kind of swap that in with some other cards in Phi. So, I'm excited to be able to see if it improves or does something different, and I can be able to get the win more often with the new deck. But that's kind of my lesson learned is, always take time to reevaluate what you're doing. If you're not getting the wins, you got to kind of look back and kind of like change something up.
Just generally don't be afraid to adjust. Like, your skill evolves, what you like playing evolves, the meta evolves around you. Yeah. Different matchups are going to have different pros and cons. Yeah. So,
and it's not like I'm playing
flexible.
Terrible. Like I felt like I was playing like very, very well. And it's just like something just wasn't helping me push past like the 1 point. Like there's something I just can't get. Like as soon I can get everyone down to 1 or 2 health, and just I need help getting pushed past that. And so like that's why I'm reevaluating. Is like I can never get there, even though I'm playing like a really good game on my end of what I feel I could do.
Right, and that's the great thing about this game too. Is that a lot of the times it comes down to that 1-to-1 wire. You know.
So yeah, that's my lesson learned. Is get good.
That's a good one. That's a great place to be.
Yeah,
it is. So my lesson learned is actually kind of piggybacking off of that. It's about the complacency with decks and matchups, right? So I played our local Prism extraordinaire Emmanuel in the Road to Nationals, and I beat him in the Swiss and beat him in the top 8, right, as Viserai. And I was like, okay, I got this matchup, you know. We got low life totals, but I didn't ever feel like it was unwinnable or out of my hands. And then we ended up playing in a tournament on Sunday and a tournament on Monday, and both times he beat me by a healthy margin because he made some adjustments, looked at the matchup. And I went into the matchups just like, oh, I already beat you twice yesterday.
I've got this, no big deal.
Exactly. And he, you know, rubbed my nose in the dirt, so to speak, and he was like, no, you gotta keep on top of your game. And it's just important to kind of remember the decks can change. A few cards can completely change a deck, and to not just write something off as an auto loss or an auto win. You know, even when I was playing Blitz and I played Chain, people said the Oldham matchup was unwinnable. And I think I lost that matchup once, and I beat 3 of them in Vegas in the team Blitz. So you can figure out a way, you just got to tweak.
That's awesome. For me, the biggest lesson that I've learned in the last week or so has really been to just keep a close eye on everything happening on the board. It's really easy sometimes, I feel like, to get into the moment to moment and sort of lose the 50,000 foot perspective. As an example, Jamie, in our match last night in the Commoner Cup, I ended up losing that, and I lost it to Blood Dead. I was playing Chain. He was playing Dory, and I got to the point where I had to block a bunch of stuff with everything in my hand, and then I was super relying on the Banish to give me something else to play. I ended up not being able to play anything. I got like 2 or 3 things into the Banish zone, and I died. And if I had been a little bit more aware of what was going on, if I had thought a step or 2 ahead, I could potentially have prevented that. So right. It's not, it's not like a chess level thing where you have to be 15, 20 moves down in the game and figure out what you're going to do at that point. But being aware of, I feel like, how everything synergizes and how it all works together mechanically, sort of like when you're looking at a clock and you see all the little gears working with one another. Keeping your eye on like the whole instead of just the individual pieces is super, super important.
Yeah, and just to go off of that, like I feel like when you first start Fab or playing Flesh and Blood, you're starting off in like the first tier, and the first tier is always like find out what I'm doing on my like just find out what you're doing. And now I feel like I'm hitting a point where it's like I'm thinking more on their turn of like, what am I sacrificing so I can have a great turn? Or like, what can I like throw away, or what, like I'm able to now like kind of utilize them to give me an awesome turn. And I feel like that's like tier 2, because first one's like figuring it out. Now it's more like I'm playing the game where I'm like using you to perpetuate me more forward.
Right. And I've seen an evolution in this game in the short time I've been here with when it comes to blocking. Just a lot of people don't like to do it. They want to just throw their 4-card hands at their opponents. And it's a very important skill to master, and what will determine outcomes a lot of the time. You need to figure out what can this hand do with 4, 3, or 2 cards. Mm-hmm. And if you're preventing more damage than you're sacrificing, then you need to block. It's not the most glamorous thing. Your turn's going to be like, whatever, I'm going to swing with this 4 power attack that makes 2 rune chance and maybe arsenal a card, but I stopped 6 of your damage, And
then the next turn, you have those 2 rune chance ready. You have your card in the arsenal, and you're better equipped at that point to start striking back.
Exactly. Yeah.
The really fascinating thing about this game for me, because I had a match at the background too when I played Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon, like all the big names and everything, as well as a bunch of little stuff nobody's ever heard of before. I was wild back in the day.
Dual Masters.
Dude, I played Dual Masters for a long time. Not to, give myself away or anything.
Beyblades?
Dude, I had like 9 Beyblades.
You did not,
No
really?
way.
100% did. I was,
Dude, that's
You're,
fire.
you're living the life that I wanted.
Yeah.
Dude, 12-year-old Greg was a baller. So, with a bunch of experience like this, one of the coolest things about Flesh and Blood is that blocking is actually a tech. It's not just something that you can do automatically and, sort of think it through for a second and decide whether you want to do it or not. There's actually like a depth of technique in there that you don't necessarily get with a lot of other things.
Yeah, a lot of other card games. And just the amount of cards you see in a game, right? Like I came from Magic where you start with 7 cards and draw 1 every turn. Flesh and Blood, you get a new 4 every turn. Mm-hmm. And it's really squeezing the maximum amount of value, either through blocking, attacking, pitching, out of each card.
And getting that recycle back.
Yeah.
And then the recycle is an interesting mechanic as well, because as far as I'm aware, that's not a big thing like almost anything else.
Right, putting cards back in your deck. And
Yeah.
it's like sometimes you do need to pitch the reds to set up your deck for a much later game.
You're absolutely right. Like I noticed that a lot with like if my games with Fi went long because he's so red heavy and dependent on going so much. It's like blue pitch takes care of everything. And then you get to the end of your deck and you're like, man, I just got a lot of blues. Like that's all I got, and there's
now
not
I'm
much I
pushing
can do.
like 4 damage on a turn.
Yeah,
I lose.
it's not doing good. So you do have to be coherent of like what's going on and make sure you shuffle it up and mix it up.
All right, guys, we're just about out of time for today. It's a little bit of a truncated episode, everybody. Life is very busy, as I'm sure that we're all aware at this point. We got to let Jamie get out of here. And
so he can go win more games.
So he can go win more games.
Woohoo.
Dominate some other tournaments. Jamie, any final thoughts you want to share with the people?
Yeah, if you guys are looking to improve at Flesh and Blood, just join the community. Get together with your fellow players and practice games, theory craft, and whatnot. A group of players will almost always be better than a single player.
Wise words.
Great words. Thank you for listening, everybody. This has been Bottom Tier. Again, as always, like or subscribe. Oh, we're on YouTube. If you like and subscribe on YouTube, follow us, subscribe on all the podcasts, and leave us a nice review. Helps us out, but we're stoked to be here. And thanks for coming, Jamie.
Thanks for inviting me, guys. I loved it.
Everyone have a great day.
Cheers.
Bottoms up. Woo!